Well, the 2016 budget has been read, said, and talked about, and we now have in the studio the senior economist from the Alternative Information and Development Centre, Dick Forsland. Dick, what did you think of it?
I think that the Treasury is indecisive, and they are preparing for an even worse budget next year. That's the impression. So if you look at they had a political space, I think.
So you thought this was bad then?
I think it was bad. Yes, I think it was bad. It doesn't address the situation, and it's a recipe, I think, for continued social unrest in the country. And one reason is, for example, they increase the social grants by between 6.1% 6.4%. But if you look in the statistics
over 3 years.
Oh, no, the next year.
Yes.
This budget is for the next year. But if you look at inflation, how it is for the poor is 20% of the households in the country. You can look at Stats SA's regular inflation reports. Then you see that the inflation for the poor is already above the increase of it's 6.6%. So it's above the increase in social grants, and food inflation is closing to 7%, and observers say that food inflation will be over 10% this year. So it's really you impose austerity on the poor. On the other hand, you have increases in the personal income tax, but because of them not phasing in national health insurance, but instead increasing the tax credit you get for medical insurance.
If you're medically insured.
If you are medically insured, and you are medically insured usually if you earn 500,000, 600,000, 700,000 rand per year. I am not, but there are people who are insured. I know that. Then, strangely enough, instead of using the political space that was before this budget to increase the tax on the rich, everybody get the tax relief. And I think it's really strange, because if you are imposing austerity on the poor at the same time by not raising social grants at the rate of the inflation that really hits the poor, then I think it's unfair. And it is a recipe for social unrest, and it's like that the Treasury doesn't want to take in what point we are at right now.
But this is going to all surely affect them even in their own terms, in terms of increased stability they require from the point of view of the lenders, from the point of view of the ratings agencies.
Yeah, so I don't think that this budget will satisfy the right-wingers and the credit rating institute, because it's too indecisive to do that, and at the same time it's a recipe for growing social unrest among the working class and the poor. That's kind of my basic impression. And they speak, of course, of the nuclear power plants, etc., which I think is an impossible project. It's both dangerous and financially impossible. And they don't budget for the national health insurance. And they say it also, we are not budgeting for the national health insurance. And they are, of course, they are not budgeting for free higher education, or for the fees must fall. In fact, if you look at the allocation to so-called post-school higher education, and you look at you examine it even with the help of the consumer price index, you will see that the allocation per student is falling. And if you use this specific education inflation index, which came to the fore during the student uprising in October, well, then there's a drastic fall in allocation per student. So the Treasury hasn't solved the political crisis of the coalition between outsourced workers and the students. It remains completely unsolved.
And they've also made it very clear that they're sticking to the NDP, which includes those infrastructure projects, which I wish I'd actually coined the phrase. It actually comes from Patrick Bond, the political economist, who says that the government is in the business of breeding white elephants, such as the scheme on the coal line to Richards Bay, etc., and the extension of the Durban harbour. Do you think this is the same sort of thing?
But I don't think that what we will breed is especially white. Is rather that is coal dust and pollution. I mean, the government is the government is in climate change denial, despite of the drought, and they are continuing with this expansion of the coal power stations and coal extractivism, etc., etc. And you have a growing conflicts all over the country between communities who want to defend their land against mining companies. One conflict which has becoming recurrent in the media, which is close to where I stay, is the political crisis on the Wild Coast, where the Amadiba coastal communities is fighting an Australian mining company. So this is also part of the National Development Plan, which is very, very much focused on mining, to dig up from the earth and to sell it abroad. And of course you can't have such an economic development in a situation of global economic crisis where the prices of commodities are falling. So I think that the whole idea of export-led growth, which has been guiding the government, guiding the government for the last 5, 6, 7 years, perhaps 10 years, it's falling apart. It cannot stand the impact of a global capitalist crisis and falling commodity prices. You have to turn more to the domestic economy. You have to increase the wages of the working class in order to have a domestic market. And if you should make investment programs, it should be social investments in local school, hospital, roads, and it should be in renewable energy. That's basically the future. So it's an indecisive budget. I'm not sure it will satisfy the right-wing credit rating institutes, and it will further enrage the poor and the working class in the country because the situation remains unchanged.
So we could basically sum up your position on this: the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Yeah, and the more they get worse. When they stay the same, it gets worse. So that's basically it.
Thank you very much, Dick Forsden. Thanks a lot.